Good afternoon and welcome to the Caregiver Teleconnection. My name is Glenda Rogers and I'm going to be facilitator for today's session with Dr. Jamie Huysman. And we're going to be talking about being prepared for life's uncertainties. We can all use this message today, I feel sure. Before Jamie gets started, let me tell you just a little bit about him if you do not know Dr. Jamie. Jamie Huysman built his innovative healthcare career on the premise that necessity is the mother of invention. His belief that the resilience of the human spirit and collaboration are key to our country's health future is the core of his philosophy. He's a fierce advocate of patient-centered healthcare and a workforce in touch with their own wellness. He has almost 30 years of medical and behavioral health experience in the nonprofit and for-profit corporate leadership roles. Today, he works in provider relations and governmental affairs for WellMed Medical Management, which is a San Antonio, Texas-based physician-owned primary clinic organization. He is the Chief Compassion Officer for WellMed. Jamie, welcome to the session today.
Thank you, Glenda. Thank you to everybody who's tuning in. And a caveat here, because Glenda says she's going through stuff, I'm going through stuff. I bet you every caregiver or a person who even qualifies in the world of caregiving or caree has the same response. I mean, literally, we are never prepared for life's uncertainties, right? And that's really the key of what we're doing today with this presentation, is we have to assume, and it's kind of sad, but it's kind of also beautiful because it's life, that we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We really don't. We do everything we can to prepare, for us today to be who we need to be today, but how are we actually prepared for life's uncertainties? So I always have to go back in some vulnerable way because I'm in treatment, I'm therapy. I've stayed, I love my practice. When I was a kid, when I was 18, I was diagnosed with depression and ADD. I started my journey realizing there was so much shame and stigma out there. And my work with my therapist and starting to climb out of the depression and starting to realize certain things really charged me up to get into this world of social work and then of psychology. I realized we go to the moon, we go to the oceans, but we don't ever really go into the mind. And the mind is the most important part of our existence here. So when my mom would come and say, "Hey, Jamie, I know you're depressed. I know you can't get out of the house. You can't do this. I want you to start keeping your eye on the donut," she says, "and not the hole." I'll never forget that because this is about the donut and the hole. Let's face it, the hole is really uncertainty. The hole is the air, the place of shame, maybe the place our minds talk to us saying we're not this, we're not that. It's the place where we have anxiety about tomorrow. We bring in the fears from yesterday. That's really what the hole is. It's uncertainty. But my mom would always say, look, the same thing that David said here, if you keep your eye on that donut and just do your work, and as caregivers, that means our work, mind, body, spirit. That means what? Take your oxygen first. You all know that. I'll refer to that to a whole lot because it was something our foundation, Lisa Gibbons Foundation, did when Lisa and I wrote the book with Dr. Laird. But your work is you. Your work is mind, body, spirit. It's all you can control, right? You can't control tomorrow. You can't control, God forbid, something happens in the car, hits you. You can't control if your child in New York ends up that her child, your grandchild, goes into treatment or gets kicked out of school, or God forbid, the losses of moms, dads, brothers, sisters, partners, husbands, wives. We can't control that. We can't control the disease. We can control, though, what's within ourselves, right? You can't control anything that's out there, right? The hurricanes, it's going to come. What you got to do, what, batten the hatch down, evacuate. You'll share that in your mind. The donut is literally the hurricane. The hole is all the panic and fear. So today I would like you as a caregiver to start embracing the wisdom of uncertainty. When we wrote the book, Take Your Oxygen First, it sounds like toxic positivity. You all know I'm not into that. But I would say when things happen, when poop happens, as my 12-year-old daughter says, and she cleaned it up for all of us, then really at that moment, we have to understand that maybe there's a gift here. that all of a sudden we don't know what to do. So I would say to caregivers, if you don't know what to do, you got to take your oxygen first. Well, I want you today, as we talk about really the uncertainty of life, to embrace the wisdom that comes along with it. I know you're saying, "Oh, are you kidding me?" But uncertainty is the only certainty there is. And knowing how to live with insecurity about that is the only security. That sounds like a mouthful, right? I guess it sounds like taxes and death and that type of thing, that we sure that that's going to happen. Even with taxes, we have dates when it happens. But things like change, we don't know when it's going to happen. We don't know how we have to adjust to change, right? This is the uncertainty. This is the key to life. So if we only can do this, and as this is the trauma therapist of me speaking to you, is if we lean into what we can control. Okay, remember, grant me the serenity. I've got it written again many times here, to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Listen, developing this concentration on the donut is embracing the uncertainty. And some of the most beautiful chapters in our lives won't have a title until much later. So it's how we really come in and embrace the uncertainty. It's not the uncertainty of itself. It's almost like when I was taught as a trauma therapist, this is not literally what your brother or sister or mom did to you when you were 10 years old. Trauma, many people can't even remember the trauma. This is what happened within you as a result of what happened to you. And so it's not important for you to have the memory. It's important to understand that what's going on inside of us is something that we can control. Those who have been in presentations of mine will know I come from I call it neurologically, I'll say friendly place, because really embracing our neurological system, creating the friendship, the ownership, the fact that it lives within us is one of the most complicated but largest systems within our own body. That the vagus nerve, which is the vagabond nerve, which is the longest nerve in our body, goes from the cortex of our brain to our healing organs into our gut and emanates from the brain, right? The prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, that reptilian brain that when we come out of our moms and dads, that's just, that happening. Understand that this is all about befriending our neurosystem. And that is the only way that uncertainty can get us as a catalyzer. So uncertainty is where things happen. It's where the opportunities for success, for happiness, for really living are waiting. And as a caregiver, I know that's not necessarily what you want to hear. You'd prefer to hear the book and open it up and say, page 1, if your engine's smoking here, this is what I bring here. Well, let me just give you the book sort of thing. My mom and dad, God love them. And my mom, God rest her soul, man, she tried to be the best mother possible. But they didn't know anything about parenting, right? No, you don't either, and I don't. I'm a psychologist, so I do understand child brain development. I maybe have a leg in, but I'm going to screw up too. But my mom went to the book. She went to Dr. Spock. And if you're a boomer or a senior on this call, you know Dr. Spock. Because my mom raised me as a Dr. Spock baby. Well, frankly, today, as looking back as a psychologist, I kind of think he should be put in jail for child abuse. The emotional things that he asked us to do or asked my parents to do had nothing to do with me ever feeling safe later. So don't go to the book, go to yourself, go inside yourself. There's a wonderful, and again, I'm agnostic on all things. All paths lead to the righteous. I'll use metaphors and symbols and quotes from Christianity, from Judaism, from Buddhism, from Hinduism. All paths lead to the righteous. Well, this one I'm going to use as Buddhist. Okay. It's called the 2-arrow theory. And the 2-arrow theory is pretty evident. Okay. We're all going to take the first arrow. We really are. As I say to my daughter, pain is inevitable, sweetheart. Suffering is not. So hear that out. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is not. We create uncertainty with our suffering. Pain is going to happen. Gosh, we're going to lose somebody in our lives we love dearly. We lose our job. Our car will break down, something. Okay, but the suffering, okay, is something that we do to ourselves. It's self-inflicted. So the Buddhist concept of the 2-arrow is you don't have to take the second arrow, nor should you inflict the second arrow. Second arrow is suffering. Suffering arises from trying to control what is uncontrollable, or from neglecting what is within our power. You hear that? Suffering is thinking you can do something about that thing you can't control. Suffering is looking at the hole and jumping into the hole of that donut. Okay? Anything about that. So the things outside your control, well, you're a caregiver. I bet you can make a list much better than I'm doing today. Okay, it's other people's actions. It's your loved one, the caree. Maybe they have a neurological issue and they're decompensating and they're third stage Alzheimer's, and you see the memory, starting to fade. Okay, that's how you're controlled. Okay, other people's words. They may call you names. You may have a long distance caregiver saying you're not doing what you need to do, but they're not doing anything. Okay, or they're even just sending a check and never looking in on mom or dad. So you got to understand you really can't allow other people's words. You can't control them to get to you, because literally you're probably talking to the codependency of that person. You can't control other people's behavior. You can't control other people's ideas, other people's feelings, other people's mistakes. Okay, but you can control your own words, your own actions, their values. They're value-based things. We have to have values. Those values keep us anchored. You can control, your effort. You can control that. You can control in some ways, maybe the mistakes. I don't know. My daughter will tell you I can't control many because I make so many, but you can control your behavior and your response. So there are three things extremely hard: steal a diamond and to know one's self. And Benjamin Franklin, who we're all used to traditional quotes, he was existential and he looked at that. The gig for us as caregivers is self-awareness. And self-awareness is a key to self-mastery. So what's the only thing we can control in our lives? Our own selves, our own ability to be empathic, our own ability to know we can't change. Unfortunately, the cancer, the kidney disease, the COPD, the diabetes in front of us of the person we've taken care of. Okay. We can be empathic. We can be accountable. Okay. If we make a mistake, those are the things we can do. Self-awareness comes from the world of Dr. Daniel Goleman and emotional intelligence in the 90s in Harvard. And I'd love for you to look it up. I do talks about that a lot. But self-awareness is the key to social awareness. If you don't have an idea of your own needs, your own skills, you don't know who you are, as Metallica says, nothing else matters if you do know who you are. If you don't know your own values, your personal interests, your hopes and dreams, okay, then it's hard to have self-awareness. So what a good therapist, a good trauma therapist, especially a good geriatric care manager, a good somebody who you can get in, just explore your needs and put your needs first. Okay, not your needs second. It's not selfish. When your loved one comes to you, if you're on one leg and you're blowing over and they're scared to death because they have a chronic terminal or acute illness, they want you to be on two legs. So your needs are more important. Why caregivers die before their loved ones die is because they put the other person's needs first. No, whether you're a child or you're taking care of a senior, your needs have to be on the ground. Your values have to be strong. These are the donut. Okay. Now, when you lean in, and I'm going to ask you to lean in and understand something very clearly here. This is a very important point now I want to point out to you. You're going to develop what's called resilience. Okay, you're going to continue to thrive despite adversity. Because in our world, and I know you're thinking that's Freudian and Jungian and Rogerian, because I'm a Jungian trained therapist. I was trained in old school psychotherapy, and we still use psychotherapeutic techniques, but we've changed a whole lot the philosophy of how we think people get well today. And I think caregivers are the most important group to have this conversation, because who needs more resilience? Who needs the resilience most than a caregiver? Okay, your challenges and difficulties and situations do not determine the outcome. You do. So the uncertainties, the unknown, those things you can't control, maybe it's triggering the fear, maybe it's triggering something in you. I want you to start saying to yourself this. I want you to continue to say to this. And this is what I say to my patients who are trauma survivors. So they'll come to me and they'll say, hey, whether it's complex trauma, and I'll talk to you about that, which is childhood trauma, or whether it was a God forbid, emotional, physical, sexual, or veterans, or lost a leg in an IED. The trauma response is that they don't want to live. And they'll say, I was going to kill myself 3 weeks ago, doctor. And I'll look at them and I'll say to them eye to eye. I don't give them the toxic positive piece. I look at them, I say, but you didn't. You didn't. You're here. What did you do in these 3 weeks that allowed you to be here? So when somebody calls me and they're suicidal, it's tragic. I want to get to it immediately. This is what I do as a therapist, right? I want to stabilize and get them out of that mode. Well, sometimes I'm working on two cases that are suicidal, and I'm on the phone with one, and I can't answer the other. Think about that for a second. It's a real dilemma. So I'll call the other person back 10 minutes later after I stabilize one, and I say, "Oh my gosh, I wasn't there. Can I help you?" And they go, "I was going to kill myself." And I go, "Well, I'm extraordinarily sorry. I bear witness to your pain, but you didn't." And they'll say, "Yeah." I said, "What did you do?" And whatever they said they did was probably 10 times better than what I could have told them to do. And this is what I want you to think as the caregiver. This is a very important thing. Never forget. Never forget how far you've come. Never forget everything you have gotten through to actually be here to listen to this. Never forget all the times you have pushed on, even when you felt you could not. Never forget all the mornings you got out of bed, no matter how hard it was. Never forget all the times you wanted to give up, but you got through another day. Never forget how much strength you have learned and developed along the way. Okay. This is leaning in. This is the resilience. This is not giving in. So I want you to say to yourself, you really have dealt with uncertainty a long time. And how? Because you've worked with yourself inside. And if you say, I'm learning to trust the journey, even when I do not understand it, and you're leaning in to experiential work, and I say experiential because that's at the heart level. Remember the longest trip we ever take, and I had to take this too, and I still am. If I don't do what I need to do tomorrow, I'll go back to who I was at 19. Longest trip we take in the.
Well, you froze up, Jamie. All right. I don't know if he can hear me or not. And I cannot do this session, you guys, so don't expect that. Let me text him and tell him he froze in place. Okay. He must have heard me. I'm texting him anyway, and he'll log back in. So take a little break. Does anybody have a question or a comment up to this point? You can put it in the chat box, or you can unmute your microphone and I'll write it down and we'll ask Jamie. The longest trip from your head is to your heart. Susan, you have heard Jamie say that before. I can tell because it's one of his quotes that I dearly love.
I love when that happens. I
Oh,
do.
don't you? I was
I do.
too
I love
doing.
it. You know why? I had a blow up here. My whole computer went down,
Oh
and
my.
actually it crashed. And I love it because it says exactly what I'm trying to say to y'all today about the uncertainty. So what did I just do? Well, I knew how far I've come. I've known that this has happened many times in the past with this computer. I have unfortunately a computer that I've sent away for United Health to get a better computer. I, for one, have understood that eventually it takes me about 2 more minutes to get online. And I understood also as I was doing that, I was doing what I'm going to do with you guys later, which is I'm going to take a breath. And at the time I was doing that, I was thinking to myself, if this had to happen, this is the perfect time and place for it to happen. Because I never forgot that this has happened before. And I never forgot that I got through this. And I never forgot that you got to trust yourself and you survived a lot. And that whatever is coming, you can pull it off. So I didn't want to worry in that moment. Listen, I've done enough presentations around to know, like my daughter says, poop will happen. But it's a waste of time. I mean, it doesn't change it. Didn't change that time. I'm a movie buff. There was a great movie I watched where three guys were actually on death row for 20 years. Two of them wrung their hands and was so upset, and every day they were crying and shaking. And the third one, for some reason, was calm, cool, and collected. And the day that finally they were executed, which is a sad sort of story because I'm not a believer of any society of doing this, but they all went to their day. And the two who were worried were crying and upset. And they looked at the other guy and said, we can't believe it. We spent the last 20 years upset and crying, and you were calm. And what happened? What'd you do? And the guy looked at me and said, if I worried, would that have helped? Think about that. So they're all going to that. And worry does not do a thing. It takes us, you understand what happens in our system. It's all neurological. I want you to understand this. That we go into fight, flight, fear response. If you understand and befriend your neurosystem, you can understand that the common sense part of you, that prefrontal cortex side, is there. It helps you. It's what you common reasoning. But when you get emotionally as a caregiver overwhelmed and besieged, okay, your limbic system, your amygdala will shut down your prefrontal cortex. Guess what happens then? Well, you go to the reptilian brain, you go to the id, you go to the child. So understand that fight, flight, freeze is a normal response to threat. You have to think about this for a second, because now I'm going to take you into a world of not just our biological defaults as a caregiver when your brain goes to fight, flight, fright, freeze response. I'm going to ask you maybe to get the book by Pete Walker. It's called How to Thrive, Not Survive with CPTSD. And understand there's a fourth response. And this is the response I came out of my childhood with, not the fight, which I have, not the flight, not or the freeze. I came out with the fawn response. The fawn response is a codependency. It's being, a chameleon for the person in front of you. It's not being open and honest. It's not being authentic. Okay. It's kind of getting through the moment. We call it codependency, but I call codependency a trauma response. Okay. It's not like anything that you can imagine. So if you froze in life, chances are you will freeze later, because we say you're doomed to recreate your dramas and traumas until you intervene on them. If you were a child and you fought, sometimes that child that fights from 3 to 5 years old in the attachment stage does also end up fighting their brains off later on and could become pretty narcissistic and become maybe a cluster B. Okay. But if you did the fawn, you ended up in that codependent world. Well, let me explain to you as caregivers, this is our childhoods I'm talking about. So PTSD, again, which is the big T, emotional, physical, sexual abuse, or let's say losing your leg or running into a cop running into a home getting shot. These are big T's, PTSD, that you've learned a lot about. How somebody gets through trauma, how somebody emerges from that terrible incident that episodically changed their life depends upon how they have adapted to childhood trauma. Childhood trauma is literally an event, a childhood trauma that a child finds overwhelming, distressing, emotionally painful. It doesn't happen only once. It's in our world, we call it death by 1,000 cuts. It's the trauma of a child could be, put in isolation for a while. When they cry, the child could have the father lecture them for 2 hours. It could be watching domestic or physical abuse in the house. It could be mental illness if they take care of. These are also called adverse childhood experiences. So I talked to you a bunch about that. I want you to keep looking at that, because that's a study. That's not the Barnes and Noble, New Age section. The adverse childhood experience studies, 20-year study, longitudinal study with tens of thousands of people. And that what they found out was that our childhood, in ages between 4 and 7, pretty much when we have the blank slate, we're a sponge. We actually, as a child, even believe we may die at the hands of an adult because we don't have any reference to it. That so many things are traumatic. Okay. I came in a very difficult family that couldn't stand each other. I never saw a healthy relationship. My sister went to treatment for alcoholism. I became pretty conduct disorder, but I also became a hero child. And when I rebelled big time. All of this comes from adverse childhood experiences. So as a caregiver, when you take care of your mom, dad, brother, or sister, your adverse childhood experiences get triggered. So my wife right now is taking care of her 91-year-old father. She went through treatment. She's got recovery of alcohol dependency. She's done 14 years now of recovery, but taking care of her 91-year-old father, that's the childhood adverse experiences that she really has not totally come to grips with. So she's taking care of them, and it's not easy, as you all know. I want you to start understanding and embracing the concept of complex PTSD, childhood PTSD, we call it, which drives our anxiety, which has us looking at the whole, not the donut. Okay. It also has us to be fixed and rescued. It has us jump in often to the victim world because we're waiting for somebody to come. Our parents back then really never did sometimes come. Now, if we were stuck in this very difficult family with no love and no connection, we probably came out very much like them. But if you had one parent that was semi-connected, neurotic, but loved you and connected with you and allowed you to cry, you probably turned out okay. But they did what their parents did, right? But the difference is with PTSD, if you're going to emerge and come out, let's say, after losing a leg and go into the Special Olympics and adjusting, chances are you've dealt a lot with your childhood trauma. Okay. If you haven't looked at it and you go through that, you probably don't. You may be stuck in your house for a long time. So I want you to understand that the uncertainty of life, okay, is anxiety. And anxiety will and does sap your energy. Okay. As a caregiver, your energy can tell you more about yourself than words. It can tell you more about the person you're with than words. Okay. Uncertainty is that. What we tended to do, and I'll use myself because it's easier because I don't know your clinical situation, nor would I call you out, but we have what's called a mask. I do a presentation always in October about the mask. Getting caught in the behind the mask is us. So let's say, I'm sure as a caregiver, we will, if somebody says, how you doing? You're going to say, I'm all right. I'm good. I'm great. I'm fine. I'll clean it up. Freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional, fine. But really, let me explain to you. Let me back up a second about the mask. I want to explain to you this mask for a second. The Japanese said it best. The Japanese said there's three masks. One we wear for the world, one we wear for our family, our partners, and our kids, and one we wear for ourselves when we look in the mirror. So I'm speaking to you about uncertainty today, and I'm speaking to the third one, the one that you look in the mirror. And I'm speaking to you about that the anger, that the anxiety, that the uncertainty, that thinking we can do something, okay, and the fear of the unknown is really a trauma reaction from childhood. And a common emotional reaction to stressful situations is anger. Anger with yourself is depression. Anger turned inward, obviously at the very extreme, is suicidal. Anger turned outward at the very extreme is homicidal. But anger, which is not an emotion, it's something which covers us, okay, is really the reaction to stressful situations. So when you're not dealing with the donut, you're looking at the whole, chances are that anger is an iceberg there, okay? And it's just going to be sitting there and you get upset at yourself, you get upset at somebody else, when really at the end of the day, I'm going to ask you as the caregiver, try to stay calm and focus yourself on what? The neurological system. The fact is, when you were born and popped out, you didn't probably have any ability to understand the neurosystem. But childbirth within itself was traumatic. You spent 8, 9 months in your mom and dad, calm, cool, and collected. And outside, you come to this crazy light-driven hospital with somebody smacking you in the rear end, hoping you're alive. And from that on, you get assaulted. What we don't do is what we need to do, which is start embracing ourselves, our neurosystems, creating what we call emotional intelligence. Okay. I really love working with Dr. Daniel Goleman, who's a phenomenal psychologist who came from Harvard. He really was the guy who kind of brought this world of emotional intelligence to us, and caregiving is so in need of this. And grab his book. It was written in the 90s, but it's applicable today. Emotional self-awareness for us as caregivers is the building blocks of the fundamental emotional intelligence we need and being able to shake off a bad mood, being able to get out of that hole and getting into the donut. And how do we do that? How do we get into the donut? Well, you heard it before, and I'm going to say it again. And gosh knows I may say it 1,000 times again when you come to a presentation of mine. You, as a caregiver, can change everything in your life today. Start the process. You have to be your own personal coach. It's not an easy gig. It's not great, easy waking up at 6 in the morning to a coach and telling you to do exercises. I know that. I'm not too good with that. But you can start retraining your brain. And this is the concept of neuroplasticity. This is the new world of psychology. This is the new world of caregiving. Is you don't have to ever get into that uncertain world. But when you're feeling that anxiety, you're feeling distress, you can literally change your brain. Okay. So the journey we take is literally to embrace our neurological system. Okay. I told you about the prefrontal cortex, the neocortex. It's your executive functioning. It's wonderful. I think you should always be in that mode. You should be safe. You should do the necessary work. Don't forget, your nervous system's out of control. Your serotonin, your inflammation, your renal function, your all the chemicals are just flowing in a way that sometimes is uncontrollable. But you can produce actual chemistry that is very much healing for your body. So I'd like you to start learning about the amygdala, the limbic system. I want you to learn about the response, the id, but I want you to understand and stay into the world of the neocortex, the frontal lobe. This is the place where is our donut. Okay. The mind's first step to self-awareness is always through the body. Sounds weird, but let me explain to you, and you would get this. As a person who's studied therapy and psychology and has been in it for 30 years myself, I will tell you this: the mind can do anything. The mind is a habit that comes from childhood. The mind can deflect, project, blame. It could do anything. The body is the place we need to make our decisions from. And if you get the book around trauma, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, he will tell you why. As a caregiver, I want you to make more decisions with your body than your mind. Your mind is the whole of your body is the donut. Okay. And when you care for your neurological system, your body can tell you what to do. So I want you to develop a treatment plan, caregivers. Okay. Uncertainty is the only certainty, remember. And knowing how to live with uncertainty is the only security. So I want you to develop your treatment plan. And I want you to do it on your own. I want to help you in any way I can. But this is the way to do it. Okay. Create the self-awareness. Self-regulation is no more than what you see behind me. Rock and roll to me is an emotional regulator. Okay. I take responsibility for my choices. In my calendar, it may say breath work at 11 o'clock. I'm going to show you a breath work at the end. It may say I need to go walk around for 10 minutes on the water somewhere, find some water. Whatever it is, I build self-regulation into my calendar. That's what creates the resilience, if I have it at all. Okay, I want you to start focusing on your self-development, your self-identification. Most importantly, your values. Who are you? Okay, who are you? Your values are what I call the antidote to the energy vampire. I call the garlic and the crucifix the energy vampire. It's your values. But you can only do this through experiential work. You cannot read yourself, caregiver. You can't use my book, Take Your Oxygen First, and get well from it. No, you can get smarter. Maybe you may get more mindful of something here, but you're not going to get better. You have to lean in to experiential techniques. I'm not talking about having to go grab the best therapist in town, San Antonio or Miami or Tampa. What I'm saying is you can do this on your own. I need you to start looking at now your personal relationships in life. You can't get well. You can't not anxious if if you have a terrible relationship. If you're in a toxic relationship with somebody, forget it. I want you to start identifying negative emotional triggers, and then you just start staying away from them. This is where it's good to have somebody like a personal trauma trained coach or a social worker to go visit once a week or once every 2 weeks. Okay. I want you to start doing self-discovery and play. I always think when I look at my daughter and she breaks into play, she teaches me so much. So as a caregiver, understand It's vital, not just important, but vital. If you're going to deal in this world of uncertainty and be certain and not go into the hole of anxiety and hell, I want you to start self-regulating. What does that mean? Well, only I had this conversation with a person who runs a department today. She said, I don't like breath work. I said, well, that's cool. What do you like? And she said, she told me what she liked. I said, well, I did trainings once for a whole group of call center people. They would get the worst calls in the world from people who are very unhappy, and they'd have to field the calls. And somebody said to me, I said that she didn't like breath work. I said, well, breath work's powerful, but what do you like? What regulates you? And the woman says, I crochet. And so I went to her manager. I said, would you let her crochet for 8 hours while she's getting calls from irate customers? And she did. And she turned into the most grounded, connected, best sort of evaluation because she had an emotional self regulator. I need you as a caregiver now. If you want to know how to deal with uncertainty, start practicing the breath work I'm about to give you. Doing a daily emotional check in with somebody, a friend. A friend is somebody who meets you halfway, not who dominates you. Okay, I want you to start practicing these coping strategies. This is 3 steps forward, 2 backwards, right? I want you to start, if it's can, get a journal out. Start, I asked my wife, how did she not relapse? I said 50% of the people who came out of the treatment center have relapsed. She says, I write my gratitude journal every day religiously, even if I have nothing to be grateful for. I say, I'm happy that you didn't get into a car accident, Jamie. I'm happy that something didn't happen. So getting your emotions out is critical. I took a lesson from my 12-year-old child who said, Daddy, how come one of her friends cuts herself? And I said, baby, I don't need to give you a whole clinical exercise, but I will tell you this. I said, anytime you don't get feelings out, you self-harm. You can't get feelings out, you're going to drink, you're going to drug, you're going to cut yourself to feel pain. Critical, get it out. Find a good therapist, definitely develop a friend who meets you halfway, okay? And start doing what we call mindful practices. I want your body to be the one that tells you. If you got a headache, you're feeling sore, your skin problems, have frequent illness, I want you to understand it may be a stress response. I want you then to go back and start self-regulating. If your mind is worried at nighttime, you have nightmares, I want you to go back and self-regulate. I want you to know if your emotions are irritable, you got that anger, I want you to realize there's a gift here. Am I self-regulating? Am I doing the things I need to? Because all that goes to the world of stress. And the second thing, if it's emotional regulation and the second part is social regulation, and you can't get well in a toxic environment, then I need you to make a solemn vow to gravitate only to healthy relationships. Period. End of story. Okay. You cannot get well if somebody around you is controlling you, lying to you, manipulating you, cheating you, bullying you. It's just no way. You can get well if you're with somebody who compromises, meets you halfway, owns interests, respects you. Okay. You can. So I need you to do an audit of your relationship. Sometimes, even if you go to a church or synagogue or ashram, it may not be the healthiest place. It may well be, but I need you to audit every setting you're at. Okay. Put the emotional self-regulators down and start auditing. So how do you know a healthy relationship? Well, it's one that your body will tell you. You're not walking on eggshells. It's a relationship where somebody in front of you is communicating well. They are committed to you in the sense of I'm there for you. I got your back. You can trust them. They're not going to stab you. Okay. The ones that don't communicate with you, they have control issues, that lack trust. Okay. They don't have your best interest. It's time for you to say no. It's time for you to look up Brene Brown and go talk about boundaries. That no is a complete sentence. And emotional boundaries are always around inappropriate topics. Okay. We don't feel well. Emotional boundaries are critical to have to protect yourself, to love yourself. Boundaries also deal well with giving us energy. Okay. If you're saying yes to everybody and people who love and adore you will accept the no. Okay. People who really want to use you transactionally will not. So understand those who are close to you will understand the word no. Okay. You need to understand boundaries are critical. If you have a hard time with these, and all of us do, I, as the fawning superhero, did, look up Brene's work on YouTube. She's very good. She's very vulnerable. She'll talk about herself. Now, I'd like for you, if any of this has triggered something into you about taking care of your neurological system, your emotional self, you can, as a caregiver, as a patient, you, outside of WellMed or outside of Optum, you can go get to esrt.wellmedcharitablefoundation.org. There's a lot more presentations I do, but again, you can't unfortunately learn from me doing these. You can become aware, and then you can then go to the experiential side, which is what I want you to do. And you can find at that website trauma resources, how to get to emotional intelligence, what this concept of neurosystem regulation is. Get your daily affirmations. All this is there. And realize, though, that this is a process, not an event. I also want you to go, and this is very important if you can, go to psychologytoday.com and put your zip code in. And out will pop a lot of therapists. I want you to look for the one that was trauma trained. I don't care if you think you ever was in a trauma or not. Okay, I want you to go to a trauma train. That's the future. And that person will help you emotionally regulate. So I want you also to, these are things that we do online there, but I want you finally to understand that you are the answer. Remember when I said, think about what you've done? Don't forget how you got here. Okay. Understand that, again, the longest journey you make is from your head to your heart. What you have done to this moment, to be the caregiver you are, to be the person you are, to really get where you're at, required you to go inside a lot and to learn a lot of resilience. So I want you to bring the experience of certainty to your daily practice. That doesn't mean sitting on a mountain in Tibet and meditating. That means just putting in emotional regulation into your calendar. That means if you think you're running with your loved one to go take them to a doctor or to, God forbid, an ER or somewhere else, I need you to do what police and firemen and emergency medical technicians do, because you're the same. You're running in the burning homes. I have them doing breath work before they go into a situation, a SWAT situation with a gun. Okay. I have them doing that. Why? Because 80 seconds of breath work will allow them to be proactive and not shoot or hurt somebody else and not get shot themselves. So I'm going to take you into this world of breath work. I'm going to also open it up for questions and answers, but I want you to, if you can, understand that breath work is a key to staying on the donut and not the hole. When you're feeling that you're in the hole and you're feeling the anxiety and the fears and where I'm going to go and what's happening tomorrow, I need you to go body based. I know you need to use your self awareness and, let's say, breath work to reduce your anxiety, to reduce your stress, to reduce your anger. Be here now. Okay. Mindfulness, not sitting on a mountain, but resetting your neurosystem, which I'm going to show you how to do, is being in the moment. In the moment is when you have your creativity. In the moment is when your innovations come out. In the moment is how you're going to make the best decision possible for you and your loved one. You're not going to do that by being in that anxious, overwhelmed world. So here's how we do. Those who have been here, I'm so thankful. You're probably black belts by now. But breath work affects you in a lot of ways. Okay. It gives you control back to you when you're feeling out of control. In less than 80 seconds, you can reset your body. If you're feeling hopeless or depressed or going down that hole in that donut, okay, I want you to reset and become more hopeful, energized, and encouraged. Okay. If you're feeling disengaged from your loved one, from yourself, I want you to start using these kind of regulatory sort of answers for dysregulation. That's all we're talking about: emotional self-regulation and social regulation. So I'd like you also to go onto Facebook if you do that. I don't do social media well, but you can go onto YouTube or certainly go onto Google and put in vagal nerve or vagus, VAGUS, nerve work. That's the future of caregivers creating safety and living in the world of certainty. Certainty that you can actually develop your own self, resilience-wise, to handle anything that comes your way. Anything. Now, I use breath work today because I think breath work is something only humans can do, that we can really reset our systems that way. But breath work will ground you on 2 feet, transforms your body chemistry, and brings control back to you. It's a powerful grounding technique. But by the way, so is yoga, so is Pilates, so is pickleball, so is walking around the clinic or working on your house. You know, putting all these things in, these are grounding techniques. But again, you'll never try, you're never going to know. So got, Nike, I always said, well, why they spend billions of dollars on just do it? Then I did my research and found out that Nike was the goddess of victory, okay, the Greek goddess of victory. And just do it is makes all the sense in the world for victory in this world of uncertainty, okay? Trusting the process. The acronym for trust is to reach ultimate success together. So just so you know, this is not woo-woo stuff. The cops and firemen, emergency medical technicians are doing this, as is and has done since the beginning of time. I'm going to dispel a rumor here for you. The man who heads up the group, the Polyvagal Institute, who I'm very privileged to be a part of, he brought us the polyvagal theory, trauma. He's an anthropologist. He's not even a psychologist. He said, Jamie, it wasn't survival of the fittest. I don't know why people think that. All those dinosaurs and tigers, Mastodonian, whatever it is, could kill us in a minute. He says people got together and co-regulated and actually calmed their neurosystems down. They were out in nature. They went the hunters and the gatherers. They calmed themselves down with the vitamin D, the sun, the activities of going out and providing for their family. They came together to make decisions as a group, co-regulated, met each other halfway. We are the only group in the world that can do this. And that's how we evolved as humans. We were able to unlock the power of the vagus nerve for self-healing. Listen, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Codependency Anonymous, Al-Anon. I'm starting a program called, Susan just totally gave me a wonderful inspiration called TARNON, Toxic Abusive Relationships. They got it right. Here's how in the 40s they got it right. AA and NA literally had the steps. You could really work the steps. You could emotionally regulate through the steps and the sponsor. But you could go then to a meeting and be co-regulated. So go figure. We got away from that. Only AA had it, and that's why it became so popular. So I want you to understand how to unlock the power of your vagus nerve every moment of the day to be totally in the donut and not the hole. Okay. Now, breath work is the great way to do it. I'm going to do it with you now. It's going to take about 80 seconds. But you can do it with any emotional regulator. So if you don't want to do the breath work, you don't have to. As a hypnotherapist, I'm not going to commandeer your breath. If you want to, you can just stay silent for 80 seconds. You can go to a safe place you once were when you close your eyes, touch it, feel it, and smell it. Okay. You can pray. Praying is a wonderful neuroregulator. Listen, again, doesn't matter to me, is it Jesus, Moses, Buddha, or Allah? But praying is a neuroregulator. That's how it works. Okay. You can also in your mind, close your mind, just be silent, go do some gratitude stuff. But whatever you'll do, you're going to calm your nervous system and your body down. Those who'd like to join me, I do 478. I think it's tremendous breath work. I have a breath work studio down here in South Florida I go to all the time. Here's how you do it. I'm going to ask you in a moment to close your eyes, and I'm going to ask you to breathe in. You'll breathe in through your nostrils for 4 seconds, like that. You feel alive, you feel refreshed. You'll keep it in your mind for up to 7 seconds. You can picture peace or rainbows or daffodils or any guided image. But the secret sauce is the exhalation. It's this. I'd like you to exhale just like this. For that exhalation, when done loudly, so your dogs and cats can hear it, or your caree or anybody can hear it, that's what triggers your vagus nerve response. Remember, I said the vagus nerve goes from the cortex to your healing organs into your gut. And that's all we're doing here. Okay. So if you'd like to do the breath work, do the breath work. If you want to do the alternative, do the alternative. But let's all close our eyes and just take home a lesson of really how we get to that donut and not have to live in that hole. So with your eyes closed, your feet on the ground. If you have shoes on, feel the floor through your shoes. And if you're barefooted, feel the floor through your feet. And with your back upright with respect, let's do 4, 7, 8, simply 4 times. Okay. So now breathe in now through your nostrils for 4 seconds. Keep it and swish it around for up to 7 seconds. Blow out with passion for 8. Breathe into calmness again for 4 seconds. Keep it, swish it around for up to 7 seconds. Blow out with gusto for 8. Breathe into calmness again for 4. Keep it. Swish it around for 7. How about the passion again for 8? Last time. Breathe in the calmness for 4 seconds. Keep it. Swish it around for 7. All the anxiety you might be feeling and stress for 8. With your eyes still closed, please. Feet on the ground. Go inside your body and scan it. As a caregiver, you just shifted the chemistry of your body in less than 80 seconds. You produced oxytocin, which is we call the happy hormone that when you hug people, feel good about, connects to your neurotransmitters. You shifted the chemistry of your body. Just go in, scan your body, scan it. You literally shifted the chemistry in less than 80 seconds. When you're ready, open your eyes and come back. Come back to this group, come back to the teleconnections vessel here. Also come back and realize that when that computer broke down, I didn't miss a beat, not because I'm any superhero. I just realized that I've done this before. I've been through this before. I got back on in 30 seconds. Guess what? As a caregiver, you too have done it before. You can come back in 30 seconds or 80. How about that when you do the breath work? But understand that type of breath work is a moment of self-compassion for yourself. I want you to emotionally regulate because a moment of self-compassion changes your day. A string of moments can change the course of your life. If you're in the Texas area, Dr. Germer's there is fabulous. It's the Mindful Self-Compassion Institute in Austin. You can get us through tyf@wellmed.net, but I want you to give yourself as a caregiver the certainty today. Okay. I want you to see the uncertainty as a precious gift. It really is. I want you to concentrate on your own self-awareness. And I want you to take your oxygen first. Okay. I want you to be the change you want to see in your loved one, your caree, your kids, your partners, your family, your friends. Okay. I want you to be that. Be the change you want to see in all others. And know that better things are coming. They really are. So keep calm, and just breathe. Glenn, that's all yours.
All right. If you want to jump in now, it's time to do that. You can raise your hand. If you're on Zoom, you can unmute your phone by pressing *6. If you're on your telephone, or the chat box is open. Have you been focusing on the donut hole or on the donut? That's the big question.
Oh, and I'll tell you what, my donut is, I know that Glenda, you're going to have Minerva edit down, maybe not edit down that break. Who knows? You'll put a sign up and say, poop happens, like my daughter says, and just say, we'll be back after dealing with the poop that happens here. And that's what you have to realize as a caregiver. So put a Chiron up, Minerva. I know you can get Dan to edit that.
And, like you said, what happened with your computer today, that's a perfect example. And before being on these with Jamie, I probably would have panicked and said, oh my gosh, what am I going to do till he gets back? Well, I didn't do that. So, Susan, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
I do. Jamie knows some of my story. And so I am my own caregiver.
Oh.
So I have to, because I have to advocate for my own health, which is what I'm doing. And this self-regulation is tricky because I have a diagnosis of complex PTSD. And what happens is sometimes I have no mental defense because I have people that are vexing my spirit around me. And I'm in the process of detaching from all of that. And so I keep doing the work. I've read the books, and I'm ready to find another therapist. I think because it's time to integrate some of the parts, um, and and really practice that self-regulation and emotional intelligence. And everything is coming together. It's all working, just not as quickly as I want. So, Jamie, in terms of being your of being your own caregiver and having, well, and my background, I was a child caregiver, so I it went it was on from a
Yeah.
very early age. um so how do you best be your own caregiver, I guess,
You
is
know,
what I'd like to ask.
I'm glad you self-disclosed because I didn't want to breach confidentiality, but being a child caregiver, you didn't have any time to watch a healthy parenting relationship where you got emotional regulation by your loved one taking care of you and honoring your authenticity. And you didn't know. And frankly, I didn't know. When I came out of an insane relationship, I never saw a healthy relationship with my parents ever. So I didn't know what a healthy relationship was either. So I came out totally unprepared in the world of relationships. So the answer is this, and it's basically is how would you have wanted to be parented back then? How would you have wanted that? How would you want to be held when you cried and somebody say the world is going to be okay? And that's called reparenting. And so the key to this is, yes, you may want to read about being fair, consistent, and available, because that's the only characteristics I know of a good parent. Not one that says I love you all the time and ends up in court of some felony. Be reparenting ourselves in the way we wanted to be parented is the way that we get through complex PTSD. And today, I realized that my parents, God love them, they didn't have a clue. Otherwise, they wouldn't have turned to Dr. Spock, who didn't have a clue either. I had to learn what it was like to reparent. Maybe my daughters helped me also much more in my own recovery because she's 12 years old. But before then, I realized there's a radical acceptance, y'all, that we know we're on our own, and maybe my mom's passing told me that, but we're not going to ever get where we need to go until we lean in and parent ourselves as well as we would like. The first toxic relationship we have is not with somebody else, y'all. It's literally as we emerge with ourselves. And so let's not gaslight ourselves. Let's be authentic. Let's know the journey is a long one. It's a beautiful one. There's nothing that waits but authenticity and healthy attachment. But the alternative is worse. So I think your awareness is there. Your self-awareness is there, Susan, always has been. And that's why you bring so much light to people, the social awareness. But y'all concentrate on yourself, parent yourself. Believe me, the person you take care of will notice it. And when they have fear and anxiety over their chronic, terminal, or acute illness, they'll feel safer in your presence.
Thank you, Susan, so much for sharing your story. It means a lot. Cynthia says, healing my inner child when I became a caregiver was so needed to be able to care for my mother.
Touche, Cynthia. It's the key. Your inner child is needing more work by you than even your mom needing work by you. And the way you allow your mom to feel safe is by taking care of your inner child. So thank you for that. Wonderful, wonderful insight.
Absolutely. I want Jamie's finishing up September for us on the Caregiver Teleconnection with this session today. If you have not seen the October calendar, it's out and it is jam-packed full of stuff. Y'all are going to get tired of me this coming month, but I'm going to be with you a lot, and that's great for me. I learn so much from the caregivers on our sessions every time we're together. So get a hold of that October calendar. You can find that on the Caregiver Teleconnection website. And for those of you on the phone, it's www.caregiverteleconnection, all one word, squished together, .org. And if you ever have any questions, concerns, issues that you need help with having to do with the Caregiver Teleconnection, you can call our customer service representative toll free at 866-390-6491. And as I said at the beginning, you can always find our sessions on YouTube or on Google just by doing a search.
And Glenda,
Yeah.
I'm going to throw this one out to everybody. It's a self-serving promotion, but our new website will be out in a week. So the charity that we have called the TAR Network, it's Toxic Abusive Relationship Network. We're adding a huge section on high conflict caregiving. And I want everybody in about a week's time to come and join the movement. And if you're in a very difficult relationship, taking care of a mom, dad, brother, sister, or was raised by somebody who also had maybe a characterological or personality disorder. In a week's time, TAR Network will be focusing on high conflict caregiving. So feel free to come.
Excellent. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you all
Sure.
for joining us today for this session, and I'm looking forward to seeing Jamie and all of you again in the month of October, which is next week. So come join us again and stay healthy, take care of yourself, and stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Be kind to yourselves.
Yes, thank you.